Alright everybody, I just wanted to take a little time and show on camera just exactly how I load my 124 grain cast bullets. So we'll see how this goes, and if it's pretty good, I'll throw it on YouTube. Just loaded my primer tube up. So basically, let's get my deal set here. I'll load a few up. See how it goes. Until I get my powder charge validated, my powder checker set, and my bullet seat die set, I like to run them through one at a time. Just make sure it's all going to go smooth before I just start sticking them in there and cranking them out. Alright, so I just resized and deprimed. Now we're going to seat the primer. Check to make sure your primer's seated a little bit below flush. That looks good. Now with the next station we're going to go up, drop a powder charge, and expand the case to accept the bullet. So let me get my digital scale running here. And I'm not even going to check that one. That was the first throw after putting the powder in. Check that one. See what that's throwing. I'm looking for 4.5 grains. That was 4, so I'm going to ease out a little bit. But you don't want to go too much on these too fast, because your first couple of drops are not going to be accurate. But I believe my powder charge the last time I loaded this round was between 4.3 and 4.4. So I know I got to go out a little bit. So I went ahead and just made that adjustment right there. Just might have to come out quite a bit more with it. There we go. That was on the money. 4.5. Now let's see if it's throwing consistently. And I am using a PTX expander right here on this powder drop die to expand the mouth a little bit to accept the bullet. And if you're going to run that PTX expander, I definitely recommend running this with it. The newer presses are going to come with this. But basically, when you go all the way up with it, this right here is going to set an amount of travel between this point and this point. And when you limit that travel, it's going to make the PTX expander die push down more on the brass and expand it more. If you're trying to use that expander without this, your adjustments are going to be a lot more ticklish. They're going to be harder to make. That little linkage, you know, I've never used it without the linkage, but from what I read, that little linkage is great. Throwing 4.5 right where I want it. That one through 4.6, so I'm going to turn back in on a little. Alright, so it's throwing pretty good. I'm not super picky on these lead rounds. Not super picky at all. So, whereas one of my 45 200 grain plus P loads, I want it right on the money every time, within a flake. These, as long as they're in the you know, general vicinity, I'm good. That one threw a little low, 4.3. Not good. If I'm shooting for 4.5, it needs to be hitting between 4.4 and 4.6. With that difference, I can't tell the difference in my point of impact. And as you can see, I take my time on this. You know, I don't measure it 3 or 4 times and then done, because I like to get it set up where it's throwing smooth and get on with the show. I don't want to be messing around with it in the middle of the process. Some days I can come out here and do this and touch this twice and it's where I want it to be. Some days I have to mess with it a little bit. It's all worth it though once you get rolling. in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to turn out 500 rounds at one sitting, you know, what's sitting here for 3 or 4 minutes messing with that? So I don't worry about it too much. I think I got it just about where I want it now. I got it throwing between 4.5 and 4.6. Got to make sure that bushing on this station stays tight. You know, the die is set, it's not going nowhere, but that bushing will wiggle loose. So you got to keep that in mind. I like to reach up there and check it about every 20 rounds. Now I'm pretty much ready to roll. So I'm going to drop my powder. Just for the sake of doing it one more time, I'm going to check it. Showing 4.7. That'll work. Right back over here and see what my powder checker tells me. Raise my O-ring so I know I'm getting it right. If you didn't check my other video on this die, the reason I chose this die over the RCBS powder checker over the Hornady powder cop is because I feel like I can tell more as far as my charge being right on the money or not. And it looks like that's good. Good to go. That's my bullet seater. I got it backed off quite a bit. See where I'm at here. That one's a hair deep. But that'll work. That'll work just fine. So now I'm going to stick it back in there, crimp it. There's one. Once you get this process rolling, you can really step on through with it. Check that primer, make sure it's seated just a hair below flush. Drop your powder. Let's see what the powder checker's telling me. Powder checker's showing good. A hair high, but good. But because it's just showing a hair high, I'm going to drop it anyway. See what the scale's telling me. 4.8. Yeah, I don't really want to go up to 4.8. So what I'll do is I'll pull a little bit out. And we'll take it on back to 4.6. Like I said, I don't mind messing with this like this, because once it gets on the money, it's smooth sailing. Sit out here and knock out 2,500 rounds in a night. We'll go back over here, run up to the powder checker again. Yeah. Right on the money. Crimp it. See, if you wanted to, you know, if you're thinking about getting into reloading and you're like, I kind of want a progressive, but all these processes at once is kind of intimidating, you can sit here until you're comfortable with the reloading process and run it like a single stage. Like I said, I like to run one piece at a time through until I know my settings are good. That showed a hair high, but then again I just lowered it, 4.7. So I'm going to fish that out to 4.6. I'm not going to mention what kind of powder I'm using, just cause. But if you can't figure it out, you're not very observative, are you? Yep. A little high again. Get it on back down to 4.6. And just so you know, you don't have to be this meticulous with your plinking ammo. I'm just kind of that way. So you know, I could be shooting. I could do some decent shooting with some ammo that was loaded anywhere from 4.4 to 4.8, and possibly 4.2 to 4.9. But since I'm taking the time to do it, might as well do it right. That one looked right on the money by the powder checker, and I'm going to go with it. So far, I really trust that powder checker. I'll leave that loose too. Sometimes it'll come back to bite you in the butt too. Now that I just did that, that's going to throw it all off. Watch. Maybe not. Let's see what we got. 4.7. I'm just going to keep messing with it until I get it throwing 4.6 constantly. Because that's just how I am. Even though it is just a lead cast, 124 grain, 9mm round. It'll bug me if I don't. I guess a good lesson of this video is, well, you got to pay attention for those too. During the culling process, you might not catch a bad round, but if you was watching, that bullet just didn't fill out the mold quite nice. Gonna toss that one. Go to something that did. Even with the PTX expander, it does need to fit pretty snug going down in there. That one looked like it threw a hair low, so I'm not going to worry about that one. If it throws a hair low, not a big deal. Or at least not my biggest concern, in that I'm going to blow my gun apart. Again, another reason for getting the RCBS powder checker. Alright, I'm going to weigh this last one. If it's looking good, we're going to roll through the rest of them. Yep, that's where we want it. It's time to go. I'm not putting a whole lot of crimp on that either. Just a little bit. Just enough to snug it. Go ahead and get this scale out of the way. You always want to pay attention to that powder checker. If you miss it, you don't check it, it ain't worth having. It does you no good. So every time you go down with that ram, check the powder checker. Or you're just loading blind if you're not. Rough today. The small pistol primers, I don't know why, but I don't get near the feel on them as I do the large pistol primers. Large pistol primers, you can really feel it, but the smalls, they just pop right in there, and you're down all the way before you even know it. Not a big deal. Just something to be concerned about. Keep checking that bushing, making sure it's not working loose. I just wanted to get some more footage of this press in action. I guess this particular video, more than anything, is just showing how that right there goes sometimes. Maybe a little hint on keeping that bushing tight. But I think I'm going to shut the camera off and knock the rest of these out in privacy. Hope y'all enjoyed. Later.